you excuse if she doesn't excuse me for what's the
Hey, the Audubon Society emailed me. They're good people. The Audubon Society. You know the Audubon Society? Animals. They are big thing about birds, but other animals and protection of the environment. I'm a member of the Audubon Society. Well, on some people. I don't know if you could work. I don't know if you could carry it off, but yeah, it's mine. Everyone who's old like me calls the Magnum PI shirt. Okay, so. All right, so a couple things. I told you yesterday, if your test is done, oh my goodness, you know what I forgot to do? I totally forgot to grade your test. Everybody take out your notes, relax for a second. I got to regrade all of your tests. And I'm going to tell you what, it's not going to be great, because this time I'm going to get straight. No, I forgot to grade your. Want me to do it? Want to see the score?
Yes.
No? Sure, why not? I'll be right back. Just give me 1 second.
Okay, cool.
You want to see the scan front? It's really cool.
No.
Why'd you get your glasses?
I did.
So nothing happened?
Thank you.
I know, I saw when you were.
I could not see.
Really
Okay, so a couple things in real quick. Number one, if you miss more than 10 points on a short ID, if you miss more than 10 points on a short ID, I'll let you redo it and get it back to me. Why do I have a manual? Oh, I did. I couldn't find hers, and I found it, and she's skipping. No, she's not. She's here. There you are. I couldn't see you. Oh, wait a second. So real fast. Let me do this real quick. I'm all messed up. My mind is frozen. So Jillian, I gave you yours, right? Okay, then you're not. Okay, you're good. So Amanda's gone, and then I need to give. Oh, and then Jamie, I lost yours. So you got to redo all your short IDs, and I think you just can redo other tests and basically everything else you have to do. Where did I set yours? Yeah.
You can organize.
What is that? Okay, so go like right.
The disorganization is probably the only reason you ever find stuff in books.
Well, you know what I do is I organize things at first, and then I just start setting things down because I'm in a hurry. And it's a really, really, really bad habit.
If you have everything organized, you never find it. When it's disorganized, you usually find it somewhere.
Okay,
It's probably the opposite.
It's how it works. Okay?
Right there.
It works that way if you want it to work that way. You gotta believe.
Oh, somebody printed this on my printer. Government is fired. I have no idea why.
They want you to put it on the wall.
That sounds like a good time.
So Jamie, did I give you back your short IDs? Okay, good. Okay, everybody, let's go ahead then where we started yesterday. Where did we finish here? Did we get to the factory system in Capital?
Okay, well, it's because I like stick my fingers right
We got half textiles. Yeah.
Oh, so we got to do textiles?
Yeah, we just finished on the Lowell system, I think.
Yeah.
Oh.
We forgot that everything was running on the same time because the workers and leaving at the same time as the water wheels.
That's what it is. Okay, we're good.
Whatever will actually take itself for it.
All right, so we got the fact, we got to here, we're right here. Goal system? All right, good.
Are we done with the number now?
No, we're still at number 5. It's all fit textiles. Okay, so. Did I start talking about how they needed all the factories, all their water power? And the thing about it is that the big wheel turning, and to disconnect the power, they have to shut down the entire factory. So did I talk all about why they need to treat workers and regiment? Did I talk about that? So I talk about the little girls. All right, good. So that's why, to keep everybody going to work at the same time, going home, to accept this, to work at the speed they wanted, and to be obedient, that's why they would specifically recruit young women. And pretty soon, at Lowell, this would be literally the Lowell Mill girls. 15 to 35, unmarried, sometimes significantly younger than 15. Nobody really cared. And they chose women because women, well, a couple reasons. First off, think about this young girl, which is just a scary picture to my point of view. I mean, she looks about 10. But see all this thread as they would whirl through their just incredibly fast speeds in the system. Well, to shut off this power loom, because it's all feeding to a loom that's making cloth. If they shut this down, the power, if there's a tangle or a knot in it, and so that one machine isn't working, they shut down the whole factory. So to save money, they want someone who has relatively small hands to reach through here. That's why young girls. And by the way, if that whirling thread catches a finger, what happens? Yeah, she's ripped off. And what happens to the girl? Fired. Immediately fired. If she survives. And also, dislocated shoulders, I guess, were endemic. It makes me, the way she looks, almost like it might have happened here. Catch the arm, pull off. If it doesn't pull the hand off, it pulls your arm off. Or pulls the dress. Catches the dress and mangles them. Incredibly dangerous jobs. But we'll talk more about saving money and that sort of thing. But I think you'll probably guess that point. But that's part of the reason for young women. But there's another thing. When they first started the factory system, this is all brand new. And to get people to work for a wage was really resisted. Men, when they worked, the idea was they worked when they wanted to, they didn't work when they wanted to, they went to work, they went to have lunch, they decided not to work, they didn't work, because people did it on their own. They worked at their homes, they worked in their own farm, they worked in their own shop. They decided, for virtually everybody, they didn't want to work here, even if they needed a job. They might be disobedient. They might say, I'm going to have lunch now, I don't care. What about women? What are women taught from day one? Well, let's look at this picture. This is why I chose this picture. Who's in charge? Is there even a doubt? Can't you see it? What are women taught? How are they taught to treat men from day one? Obey. Women are taught to be obedient and subservient to men from day one. Even though women actually had significantly more economic power before the Industrial Revolution than they would afterwards, they were equal to men. They still were subservient to men. They were taught to obey men. Therefore, on the factory floor, they have been trained from day one to obey. Where men, not quite yet. They're going to have to be broken. Women were already partially broke. And yeah, that is shockingly sexist, and yes, it would be used against women because of this. Women were already treated that way. And we'll get to this whole idea about the way women are supposed to act, which was created with the Industrial Revolution. In fact, they would have a name for it. How women are supposed to act would come out of the Industrial Revolution that's related to how women would treat men. It was a cult. Do you remember that term for your quiz from chapter 12? Yeah, cult of domesticity, to be a domestic servant. And that's the number one goal of women. And that was basically beaten into women when they lost their economic power here. And so that's what it is here. And therefore they can be more regimented because women will obey. And they can be beaten. And I'm not being facetious. Yeah. Drop them on. What are they going to do? And that's the way they would run this place. And women, because they were women, they could artificially push the wages down. I'll talk more about wages a little bit later. And here's the thing about it. Could any worker actually be free if they work at a place where they have basically no control over what they do there? In fact, they're told when they come to work, they're told when they go to the bathroom, and they're told when they eat lunch, they're told when they go home, they're told how fast to work, they're told what to say and what not to say. By the way, yes, that's what work is now. Huh. That's weird. No, isn't that weird? No, I'm not kidding. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Huh. It's not at school. I wonder what schools come from, public schools. I wonder what time public schools first started coming about. Oh, about this time. Isn't that interesting? Are you truly free if you work? Well, a lot of people fought against this. In fact, they would go right down to a bell would ring when they would get up. A bell would ring when they would eat. In fact, at Lowell, they would have the women live in dorms, and they would control every moment of their life. They would all get up together. They'd all go to work together. How would they know what time to go to work? Nobody cared what time it was before the Industrial Revolution. Why would you ever care? You worked when you needed to work. Now they want you there at a certain time so they can start the power. And so they all eat lunch at the exact same time, at 35 minutes. And yeah, they would time you to go to the bathroom, which, yes, that's what happens today. If you don't believe me, you gotta look at a little bit about the way Google workers, Amazon workers work. They're literally with a stopwatch when you go to the bathroom. And if you go over, you're fired after a certain number of times. So it hasn't really changed a lot. And in fact, they would try to plan social events. And if a young woman would get married, immediately fired. Pregnant, of course, fired. Of course, that was a norm in the United States till the early 1980s. Women just being fired. Female teachers got pregnant, boom, you're done, fired. And anybody who has a mother who's a teacher, they probably were pregnant when you were teaching, so if they were teaching, they would have lost their job. Only reason I mentioned that's actually really interesting because one of the three top candidates, there's three, and actually the polls have them kind of intermixed, running for the Democratic nomination against President Trump. Elizabeth Warren was a teacher, first-year teacher. She was married. She became pregnant with her first kid, and they basically told her, don't come back. She was fired. So that's not that long ago, really, if you think about it. Even though, yes, the President Trump and the three main Democrats are all over 70. That's pretty amazing. But back to this. They control your life. Bells. Isn't that interesting? How did they break young men? Well, lots of reasons. The economy changed and you need to survive, so you do what it takes to survive. But have you noticed the way school is structured? When you come to school, the bells. When you eat lunch, the bells tell you. When you come back from lunch, the bells tell you. When you're allowed to go home, the bells tell you. You ask permission to go to the bathroom. You are punished if you're late. You're rewarded if you obey. Schools were designed to make you partially into good little workers and to beat you into submission. So you just accept it. So when you said there's an element of school like that, yeah. Now that's not necessarily bad, especially at a school of 1,400 people. Can you imagine we just had everyone running around, and how would you possibly get information? There's a lot of different styles of teaching, so people have to control it. Still, you're being manipulated this whole time. And think about it, we just had a test. You're rewarded for obeying and doing what I tell you to do. You're punished if you don't. I know it's more complex than that, but isn't that what it is? Aren't there rules in schools that you look at and you think, God, why do they have that rule? That doesn't make any sense. Why do they have rules like that? So you learn to obey. So then when you go in the workforce, what do? You accept these things. Which, by the way, when I told you that thing about work, most of you are like, okay, some of you might have been thinking, well, I'm not going to get a job like that. The odds are probably most of you will. But secondly, we just accept it now, don't we? Isn't it amazing how manipulated you are? Isn't it funny that we used to all think we had free will? Okay, that's me being slightly facetious, but also partially true. By the way, it is kind of scary. Boy, couldn't people use that against you, especially if you don't know? It's pretty easy to find people who might not pay attention and, I don't care, tell them what to do, I don't care. That's shocking how many people are like that. But that's why schools function the way they do. There are other reasons, but that's it. You follow the bells. And look out in the hallway. Works pretty well, doesn't it? Anybody out there? You ever notice fourth period how hungry you get? Works really well, doesn't it? It's great when a couple days a year we'll have fifth period after fourth period. We won't have lunch after fifth period. There's a couple days we have that. And how hungry and starving and miserable everybody is fifth period, even though it's not that much later than the regular time for lunch. You're trained well. And that's how they did it. Education does have this way to indoctrinate. So with that, you're exactly right about education. It's not bad, it's not good, it's complex. Well, workers being treated like that, it'd be the young women at Lowell would be the first one to start labor unions. And their main question was not pay, it was not even like working hours. It was this question: do all workers have rights? Do they have rights? Or do you give up your life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness when you enter the workplace? Do you have rights? And that's the number one demand of labor unions. And the two things you have to get about this. By the way, I chose these pictures carefully. I like this picture to get all the women working this incredibly dangerous job. By the way, there's fabric fibers floating in the air, so one spark and it literally just explodes. And she looks so young. If one person at Lowell, which had 5,000 workers, if one worker goes in, she goes in and she says, pay is awful, it's incredibly dangerous, I need more than 15 seconds to go to the bathroom, I want better conditions. One worker out of 3,000, what happens to that one worker? Fired. And by the way, Montana, it's actually kind of difficult to do that. Most states, you can fire immediately. You literally just stop, fire. Montana, that can't happen. Fired. But what else? Let's say if all 3,000 going together, say we want slightly longer lunch and things like that.
Why is it difficult to do that in Montana?
Montana has rules you have to fire with cause. Montana used to have really strong labor unions, and so unions pitched the legislature to do that. Trust me, business owners would love to get rid of that. If we get there's a very good chance we'll have a Republican governor and Republican House and Senate, and that will probably go away to make it easier to fire. Because you go to most states like South Dakota, any state surrounding Montana, and they can fire you just gone. Heck, they could fire you if you post something inappropriate on Twitter or Facebook. Just not inappropriate, something you don't like. Yeah. So those rights don't necessarily go to the workplace. And so I'm always fascinated when people say, I have the right to speak, it's right to say what I want in the workplace. Actually, maybe you should, but that's written nowhere. Remember I told you about the First Amendment? Congress can't take that away, not your employer. This is a question that the United States has never dealt with. Most of these laws are going away. Maybe they'll come back, unions are really weak now. But we're jumping right to this. Once you have the textile industry, the beginning of the factory system, then you have new power. Water, it floods, it freezes, all kinds of problems with water power, and you got to be stuck to a stream. Coal and iron would be key, and that's why so many of the first real big heavy industry would be in the middle Atlantic, like New York and Pennsylvania, and that's why they're also like in Ohio in this area, because they're on both sides of the Appalachian Mountains, while the coal mines are, and iron mines. Coal for the power, iron for so many things, but we're getting to it for railroad. And this is the Union Iron Works in Pittsburgh. A couple of coal miners. These are hard rock mining, tough duty down in the incredibly dangerous. Hundreds of miners would die every month at that time. That was the norm. And of course, there was no such thing as workers' comp or anything. Workers would have to fight very hard for that. But things, these mules, most of these, the really deep mines, those mules would be born and die in those mines. Just there. They never get out. And you can see, this is kind of a cool picture. You see the rail right here? So you pull them on the rails so they wouldn't sink. And anybody know what these boys are? It's on a chute. So coal's going down the chute. Anybody know what they're doing?
Aren't they like adding it out?
Well, they're doing two things. They're pounding and picking at it. So they're doing two things. If a rock or something, they throw it out. But they're also called breaker boys. Coal comes in big chunks, but it cleaves off in sheets. They want it smaller pieces, so they pound on it with their feet to break it into smaller pieces so it's easier to use. See why you want boys? Put a bunch of them on here. You can beat them if they get out of line. It drops wages, but that's another story. And what happens if one of these boys fall in off their seat? They're just mangled if they don't die. And fired, of course. Incredibly dangerous, awful, scary work. Hard rock mining is tough. To this day, it's incredibly dangerous. 2 years ago in the coal mine, when they took out all the safety features to save money, this was in West Virginia, 36 coal miners died just 2 years ago in the United States. Really dangerous. So many people die on the workplace. But iron and coal in the Middle Atlantic. This is a new steam power, and it all stems from this basic thing, the steam engine. James Watt, a Scotsman, perfected this. Okay, the steam engine was actually, made by this guy named Thomas Newcomen to pump water out of mines. And Watt perfected it to make it the engine of the Industrial Revolution. Countries that had steam power first, that's why we need coal and iron and the facilities to make high quality iron. We're not quite to steel yet. They would dominate the world. It's no coincidence that in the 1870s, 1880s, you have these countries that were in the Industrial Revolution, they'd begin to conquer every place else in the world. Britain would make this massive empire, France, Germany to a lesser degree, and the United States. It's not that they were smarter or better or braver fighters, it's because they had steam. And words like this. So you see this, that's called the rocker, but this piston right here, what happens was this. Here's water, heat source. Boil the water, steam. So that's why steam engines take a while. You got to get the water boiled, and then it releases steam into this shaft. And what happens here is this pushes the piston up. So this is the piston. It pushes it up. That's what it walks up. Then how do you get it back down? They shoot a jet of water in there. That cools it down quickly. It's supposed to be as close to a vacuum as possible on this piston. Cools off, so the steam just sinks. What happens? Sucks that down. Steam up, sucks it down. Up, down, up, down, up, down. And that's steam engine. That's how it works. It's a pretty remarkable device, but you need really high quality steam. This is the part that would blow up. Remember I mentioned steam engines? Because you start getting bigger ones for like a big steamboat, needs to start any imperfection, just blow up. Really pretty dangerous. But would power everything. This would turn the wheel to run the factories. This would propel the steam locomotives and steam engines. This is a little museum in Scotland. They tried to make little cars out of this. The problem is this would be about 400 degrees and blow up. It wasn't very practical. An internal combustion engine works on basically the same concept. And if you ever drive by, you see like an oil one of those hammerheads oil wells, hammerhead that go up and down like that, that's all it is. It's just the same thing. Same thing. So, steam. Because once you have steam, think about all the things you need for steam. Let's go backtrack. Think about a railroad. Just imagine you're sitting there today, and also you say, I'm going to build a railroad from scratch. Got a shovel, I'm going. Now, what do you need to build a railroad? Because you think about all these things you need. We've got steam and coal, we talk about iron, we talk about transportation. No, you can't just sit there and say, let's build a railroad. Now, most of you, when you were born, roads were there, right? They didn't just appear. Me being a little bit older, I remember before railroads. No, I can remember big hunks of Montana, there were interstates. So that's they built the interstates, that's true. And so I had a little bit like, oh, so there was an interstate, change things. There was an interstate in Mile City. We had running water, okay. But what do you need to build a railroad? Think about how railroads ripple to all parts of the country. That's why railroads are such a big deal. What? Someone said something. You need a lot of wood for the ties, for fuel, for the telegraph lines we get to in a second, for everything. You need wood for the benches, for the seats. In fact, of all the forests that were still around when the United States became a country in 1776, in the next 124 years, 97% of those would be cut down, mostly because of railroads. So if you see forests, especially go to eastern United States, here it's hard to get your forest, so not as much. And remember, it doesn't rain as much in the forest, isn't as thick. But easy to get to, they cut it down. You go to the eastern United States, you see forests, that's second, third, fourth generation forests. In fact, some of them you walk into and it's really weird because all the trees are like in a straight line. Like, oh, these have been planted. Well, wood, what else do you need? Iron, and the steel industry, which would literally make the country, the United States, will come because of railroads. You need lots of iron. That means you need mines and facilities and all this elaborate system. Because you can't just simply say, I'm going to go to the store and buy iron. No, this is a really incredible industrial feat. What else do you need? Workers. Lots of workers. You need anybody from the incredibly hard, and they have to be clever, but they don't have necessarily certain skills to lay the track and do all that. But also you need trained, very skilled workers to run the engines, to run the brakes, to repair the engines in the cars, to make new cars, and also to make this incredibly elaborate system to repair trains. You can't just have any yahoo make a bridge. Hey, let's put some boards over and run a train over it. What do you need? What do you need? Skilled people. Where do they come from? And a whole apparatus for schools had to be created. And that means schools. And by the way, I'm telling you a lot. Now, make sure you get somewhere down. We're talking about how all this steam of power led to this. So jot a couple of these things down. Yeah, you need all of this stuff. The school system we have, in fact, out of the railroads, these skilled people that know how to grade the land and survey it and make bridges and make these incredibly elaborate roundhouses, which are the coolest thing ever to, I think, I can't help it, to fix trains. What's going to come out? What do we call these professions? Have you heard the term engineer? That comes from railroads. That's why they're called engineers, because of the engine. They didn't exist till the railroads. And so you need new ways to make bridges. What else do you need? Don't you need an elaborate system to get right-of-ways on land? What if a train is coming this way and a train's coming this way? Uh-oh, there might be a problem. What do you need? Or train coming this way, bridges out. Okay, what do we need? What? Yeah. Where do you think why telegraph is such a big deal? Railroads. What time is, how do we know it's noon in Helena? We look at our phone. How do we know it's noon? What's noon? What's noon? The sun is hot. So isn't it noon in different places or different time in every single place in the United States just about?
Yes.
Don't you need to have good time if you're going to run a bunch of trains together? Or you might get a lot of trains running into each other? How do you schedule if you don't know time? Railroads would make the time zones. They just did it, and everybody followed. And there's so much more leather industry. In fact, a whole industry how to make relatively micro plumbing for the luxury trains. And we just go on and on. Railroads built this country. Railroads, and this is one thing I do want you to get, would be a massive industry on their own. They would require all of that iron and steel would be by the railroads. The railroads required to build them, and then they would demand it, and then build more railroads, they demanded more. So that leads us to, all of that is innovation. Innovation began to explode at this time. Absolutely explode. Because of now there's a power source. It made no sense to have one of these if you didn't have a power source to make it efficient. What did Elias Howe invent? The sewing machine. A wheel would turn, a belt would turn that right here, and you can have a powered sewing machine. Oh, sure, would help. And maybe you've seen those, a hand crank sewing machine. Anyone sew? Anyone sews in here? Okay, fourth period, like half the class could sew. So we're losing our skills. Just one period, they're just going away.
You couldn't even say so.
I know, that's why I couldn't do it. But the same process that sewing machines use today, it's Howe's invention. Actually pretty remarkable. Don't forget, if you think all these inventions, think, wow, all these new things, virtually everything we use, you use today, is not a heck of a lot different than what I use. Yeah, maybe the cell phone, but that's almost everything else you use is basically the same. Still basically the same. And, well, what is this? Oh, but this doesn't make sense without power. Once you have power, you start innovating and build all kinds of things that come off that. And more things. Can you imagine what happened when electricity hit? All of a sudden just, wow! Hey, you're not going to have a light bulb until you have electricity. So they're like, oh, why did they invent the light bulb? It was relatively easy. Wait a sec, you need electricity. But that's coming. That's cotton gin. And that would be used to separate the cotton from the seed. Eli Whitney. We'll come back to this. But a major machine that tied in with the old plantation or slave labor camps. What did Morse perfect? That's the telegraph, and he needed something to use Morse code. Telegraph. All of a sudden, communication became not quite instantaneous, but pretty close. So all the telegraph was, it shot a little electrical pulse down a wire. Now, they did it down a steel wire. If you know anything about steel, it doesn't conduct electricity very well, so it kind of bleed away. So for the first 40 years of the telegraph, you had to have a station every 15 miles. And there had to be somebody 24 hours a day with these kind of primitive headsets. There were more of these sheets of metal that would just kind of make a staticky, crinkly sound. It'd be really hard to do. 24 hours a day just sitting there, waiting. And they get a message and they send it down the line 15 miles and so on. So when I was young, we still called it telegraph, but if you ever play it, I think they call it telephone. You start like a whisper message, you pass. You ever play that and go all the way through? That's a real thing. They had to go through all these sources to get there, but still, messages that used to take days now can be done in minutes. By the way, just electricity. And the thing is, this is one of the first, this is Morse's first thing. That's a little battery you'd spin and create basically static electricity. See that? You press that down. You ever seen it? Now it's almost always in movies. That little thing and for Morse code. Do you want to try to learn Morse code? I did. It's so hard that I found something else to do. But all it does, when you push that button down, it connects the wires, and that sends a bit of electricity. A quick pulse, called a dot, little bit of static. Hold it longer, a dash, a little bit more. And that's how it came up with Morse code, which is really hard to read. By the way, when they finally had long-range radios in the beginning of the 20th century, that's where SOS comes from. Anybody know why SOS would be the international signal for danger, basically a ship sinking at first?
It was easy to remember.
Exactly. Easy to remember, but also easy to hear. S is ... O is dash, S ... There's no other word, very few English words like that, SOS, so. You ever heard like save our ship and that stuff? That came after they came up with that. Well, here's the big thing about Morse code, or think about telegram. Get these two things down. First off, news. You get news really quick. Pass information around. But then there's another thing. It'll allow for bigger business. It'll allow for business to get bigger. We'll talk about this on Monday, but big business has a huge advantage. Business could get bigger. Because, let's say you run the Lowell factory, 3,000 workers. Before communication, where did you have to be to make sure that factory was running right? You literally had to be there all the time. But with modern communications, this is modern communications, one person could manage companies in different spots and communicate by Morse code. And that would allow for bigger. That means one person in a key section, especially a financial sector, right, New York City. Could run factories in Pennsylvania or Massachusetts. Not Massachusetts. Massachusetts. That'll offer bigger business. I can't begin to tell you what a big deal bigger business is. Morse code's huge. And so you can imagine what a big deal telephone is, and just people, and then so on, internet, etc. because of that. Here's a few more. Here's McCormick. All right, let's get to Deere first. John Deere, what did Deere invent? So someone say tractor. Not yet. That's steel tip plow. So John Deere came up with a steel tip plow. If you look at this plow right here, it stays sharp. It can dig through the hard soil of places like Iowa and dig a nice furrow. So you could plow faster. Remember the thing we talked about when I mentioned the machines, that they took less manpower. One person could do more work. And so here is this future plow. Pulled by horses would be right here. The rider would sit here, that's the plow, and that would turn to and it would scour, knock the dirt off. So you could cut right through. Plow a lot more. Now, these two, what's that? Cyrus McCormick. You know what that is? Okay, let's say I had a field of wheat. How did you get through?
Yeah, a combine.
Yeah, it's a precursor to a combine. It's called a mechanical reaper. Okay, let's say you're going to cut down grain. Now you got how they got grain? Bread didn't just appear. Where does it come from? Before, they would take, and it's somebody called a reaper, and what was the instrument they would use? A sickle or a scythe, and they would knock it down, and so just cut down the grain, and then they would take the big bundles of grain and they would beat it against a rock, and the grain would come off into a basket, and that's how you got the grain. Hard, back-breaking work. By the way, that sickle became a representation of workers, just like a hammer would. So in the Soviet Union, at least when they first they had high goals of becoming a workers' paradise. Something else was established there, but that's why they had a sickle, farm worker, industrial. But this cuts it here. See that little blade right there? It's pulled by a horseback. There's a wheel here that turns this. It's like these turn. It cuts the grain. They get caught in these bars, and it kind of topples them around for a few times. The stalk falls off. The grain falls down. How many men does this replace? 10. This did the work of 10 men. So you know what a combine is and thrasher? That's all. They do the exact same thing, just bigger versions of this. You know, more efficient, but that's all they are. Just a lot bigger. So this can do work of 10 men. When I talk about productivity, that's a massive gain of productivity. One person can do what 10 men did. That's huge. Is that good for farms? Are you sure? Is that good? Think about small farms. Farmers are always in what? How are they going to buy this thing? Go into debt. If a bunch of farmers have all these products now that make them grow more, they grow more wheat. What happens to the price of wheat if supply goes up? It goes down. How do they pay back their debt? And who used to do the work for them? For small farms. Kids. That's why they have big families, little workers. Now what do you do with the little workers? You don't need them anymore. Who wanted to send them all to the cities and make them factory workers? Hamilton's dream would happen. It's just going to take 100 years. That's what's down with small farms. This great technology would eventually kill them. And there'd be other things that happen. Now, don't get me wrong. I like to eat. I eat between 40 and 50,000 calories a day. And so, I know, I'm cutting back too. Yeah, I'm going to be 580 by tomorrow. I'm close. Okay, with that, this is a huge change. It's always more complex. Wow, a machine. So, Next, why here in the US? Why did this happen here? Why do we have the American system of industry? We already mentioned that's interchangeable parts, but for some reason I put the asterisk here, I meant to put it here. Henry Clay would promote, he called it the American system of government aid for business. And so it's going to be called the American system of government aid too. So we have government aid, which is Clay, but also just interchangeable parts. So there's two American systems, interchangeable parts, government aid. Why here? And I put this because iron shipbuilding was such a big part of the Industrial Revolution. Sabre, Paul Moore, even though to me iron shouldn't float, seems like, you know, you drop a piece of iron in water, it sinks, right? That's science. Moving on, these are the reasons why. First one, there's more demand. More people want to buy things in the United States than most other places in the world. Because the US had the largest middle class, or what they called back in the 1840s, middling class. The vast majority of people are working class, so they require everything, almost everything to survive. Tiny top upper class. They basically don't need to work to afford the lifestyle of the home, and horses and carriages and servants. Servants are like the real sign of upper class men. But luxuries like a home that you own yourself, things like that. Middle class, they have to work, but they have extra money besides survival, so they could buy some of those things. There's more middle class people in the United States, there's more demand. And I can't emphasize that enough. There are more people to buy stuff. Now, this graph shows the wealth of the top 1%. It's really hard to figure out wealth. You know, income is just money. That's how much money it is. But wealth, you know, people buy art. How much is art worth? Yeah, so it's really hard to measure that. The richest 1%, so in 1800, the richest 1% had about 25% of the wealth. So you notice a lot more wealth than the richest 1% in Britain and France. That means 75% of the wealth was spread amongst other people. That means more people had money to spend stuff. Now, when the Industrial Revolution came into place, see how much the rich got richer? By the way, here's World War I, antitrust within the New Deal. And, but the point is this, if the richest 1% have less wealth, those in the bottom have more money. And in the United States, the richest 1% were not as rich. Until today. Now the US is much more unequal than Britain and France. And that goes up to 2005. It went down during the crash. Anybody know where it's at now? About here. The rich, the 1% is getting wealth faster than ever before in the history of the planet. In the US. No place else. Because of Trump. Well, conservative economics. That's the plan, put money in their hand. But President Trump, you know, low three, President Bush, but conservative in the Democrats and Republican Party wanted the rich to have more money. These are political decisions. But during the Trump administration, massive tax cuts for the wealthy. They've really picked up. So that's where right now, we'll come back to that issue. Now, shortage of labor. Now, shortage of labor goes twofold. First off, there's just not many people in the United States. There are a lot of people going west, and remember the goal is they still want to get to that little farm. So if there's a shortage of labor, what does that do to wages? Yeah, wages go up a little bit. That means more demand. So that helps. But there's another thing. Get this down. Shortage of skilled workers. Skilled workers are the ones who are first replaced by machines. There's a shortage of skilled workers in the United States. So there's not as many skilled workers complain, or arguably, rightfully so, about complaining about their jobs being taken by machines. Now, when it gets into the end of the century, there'll be a lot of workers who, almost every worker is going to be replaced by a machine of this century. That's why our productivity is so low, because we've had most jobs have been replaced by machines since in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. Most jobs. There have been other jobs created. So, next, capital. The United States had more capital resources, not just more land, but the biggie is fuel. The US had an abundance of wood, then coal, water power, and coming with coal, Western Pennsylvania, they started finding kerosene, petroleum. And that's coming at the end of the century. The US had more. That cheaper capital would give it a great advantage over places like France or Russia, which had to import their coal when they began the Industrial Revolution from England, which is so weird, but they just had bad transportation. And lastly, we've already talked about this, education. Not only the United States have a compliant workforce, but the US was more literate than any other country in the world. 90% of the population of the North, young men and young women, so we're talking school age, were literate. That's higher than any. Britain was about 30%. In the South, it was about 70% of white men, about 60% of white women. South has always had lower literacy rate, not because there's dumber, just different points of view, but education would be key. Think about this year in school. This is probably the first year you've had probably a lot of pretty difficult classes. And there are a lot of varying classes. I mean, it might be difficult, it might be science, might be English, might be history, but a lot of different ones. And you learn a lot of things thrown at you. When you learn more, you adapt easier. With the massive technological changes and the way the workplace changes all the time starting then, an educated workforce adapts better. Did everyone catch that? You adapt better. And there's something else. You're more subservient. If you're in school, you're more subservient. You're taught that this is a good system and this is what to expect. So, it's no coincidence out of this American system we have the development of public education. And one of the big things about this was, first off, we follow a little bit of the role model of Horace Mann, but a lot of this was rote memorization, which don't get me wrong. You have to have a good memory. But it's more than that, yeah.
So at the very beginning, you said that there was two parts to the American system of education?
Yeah, Henry Clay, and that's a government program called American System. And we'll get to more of that in detail down the road.
So he is different than interchangeable parts?
Yes. But they're both called American System. So, the first thing is the public education system created here is going to be universal. Now, I put asterisks by it. I put 6 asterisks by it. When I mean universal, the idea was everyone could go. Could everyone go? Did everyone go? And the other thing is every school going to be equal? Just like now, it's even more stark now, the wealthier the areas, the better the schools. They put more money into it. People go to school in wealthy areas. They accept that schools will help them so people do better. Things like that. But this idea that everybody has this access to it, that was an element the United States did before almost anybody else, at least the complex way the US would do it. Now we do it in a really hackneyed way, but that's what here. But here's the big thing, it's a twofold thing that Horace Mann wanted from education. I love this picture. And doesn't that look like a noose or something? I don't want to know what goes on in that school, but that's back when there used to be corporal punishment. That's back when we used to beat students. Wasn't that those the glory days? I mean, I got spanked by the principal. And a bum rap. We got into a fight over a football game. That's worth fighting for, right? By the way, that's when we had the paddles. I had to pick my paddle. True story. Mr. Gunlock's office went in, he had 3 paddles up. 1 paddle, just a piece of wood. 1 paddle with a big hole in it. 1 paddle with a bunch of holes drilled in it. You had to pick your paddle.
Which one would you pick?
Well, I knew. You picked the solid. But I knew a lot of people picked one with a bunch of holes thinking it would be less. But there's no air resistance, so it really.
Oh, really?
Bum rap. Never mind. No. But last thing really quick. It's twofold thing. To make good citizens, but also good workers. And that's something that schools deal with to this day. Because good, free-thinking citizens that employ the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness aren't necessarily the best workers to be compliant and obey. Do you see a problem here? And before you go, let me show you one more thing. No, this is, but here we go. Here is a product of our education system. And what's ironic about this? Except for illiterate. I love that one. Oh, test. By the way, actually, the United States has incredibly good schools. better than most of the world. Our problem is we also have the highest poverty rate of industrialized. You did really well in
That's my water.
Monday. The part that matters the most to me. What? Have a good day, everybody. Right when you find work, hang by your thumb.
Also, I'm gonna ask you, during budget season, since all the drawing like this career walk, could I come in person? Okay, you know I will.
No sweat.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even think about that. Volleyball season will be gone in a while.
Basketball will.
Or basketball, I mean.
I did, I know. That was so nice. Yeah.
I just need to say volleyball.
No.
But yeah,
No, you're the volleyball player.
These should not have the.
We're so just gonna see. Yeah. Pretty much all of them are. You just tape it together. Wait. Tape it together. Someone forgot their zip. Someone's gonna really regret that this weekend.
Oh. You have your paper.
It's fine. I didn't open that one time.
Huh?
$5.
You didn't take any of your paper? Really?
Not so.
I want
Civilization. Monarchy.
Were you typing it?
Wait, what is it?
And I'm seeing.
Thank you. I got it at Goodwill.
Oh, sure. And, you can go second. Let's go second to make sure you're on. Everybody has their paper to turn in. Ella, you're first.
I don't think it's all.
Huh? You were supposed to get that before. No excuse. Go into the end. You're not going to get anything else out.
I know, I'm kind of like.
Let me check again, but I'm pretty sure.
I'm not ready until Tuesday, so you guys have to send it again, but
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Huh? Run!
Yeah, some additional.
All right, so we're going to start right away, and you have a citation somewhere?
How old is the person? How old do you think the person did that spelling test was? That looks like it's like second grade writing.
Yeah, it's supposed to be junior high, and it's a little bit mean to print that, but at the same time, it's just so funny because it's so ironic.
Okay, right on. I'm a illiterate is spelled right. No, like that is friendly.
That's the only ironic thing. And by the way, yeah, glass houses, let's not judge too much. Yeah. Yeah, you have to jot down a few things, because I will ask a couple questions from everybody's presentation.
So what kind of things should we write down? What kind of things?
I would, what the questions will be like, in the second minute of Ella's presentation, what direction did she look?
So say where you film it. Yeah.
So try to get down the main points of the event, a couple main points like who did the conspiracy and the results. When she's done, I'll go back and I'll tell you the things I jotted down to give you an idea.
Okay. Okay, I thought it was like a grading key for like students, like how they're awkward.
And what I'm going to do is, so when I student taught, I know what you're thinking. This is before we had buildings in school.
Yes, that's exactly what you were still.
So when I student taught, and I was up in front of the room, my supervising teacher came back and she sat back at the classroom, and she sat with the legal pad and a pencil. And I'd be up there and I'd say something and she'd look at me. That's exactly what she did. She'd go. The whole time. I was up there for 30 minutes and I go, and look back, just. the whole time. What am I doing? I had no idea what I was doing wrong. And student teaching is so hard anyways.
Are those?
Was she messing with you?
Yes, that's for my lunch.
We always have a whole bag a day.
I eat about 4 or 5
Full
bags.
bag of days.
And here's the best part though. I got done and I went back and I was expecting her to say, have you thought of another major? And said, she goes, you did really well. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't listening at all. She was thinking about something else and it just came out. But yeah.
So basically, you're saying you don't care.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do it. And then I'll occasionally make this kind of random noise.
I say so.
Wouldn't that just be off in the middle of the word? Yeah.
But I think it's everyone like, yep.
I
That's
think
not bad.
I think I should ring the bell after I say something.
I'm getting older. It's hard for me to go. Let's see. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was a lot.
City bombing was in Oklahoma City.
Just like I need a new legal pad.
I would love to watch
So on the quiz, is it going to have like the name of the people that did it? Or the name of the things?
What is,
I might ask, like, if it's a really prominent name, like what person did it. Like this one, you're gonna have 2 very prominent names.
yes.
No, I mean, like, are you gonna say what was
Oh,
the
No, I'll say Oklahoma City.
It's on the first one.
So I like headings. We really make me happy.
Okay, but you didn't make it. I'm kidding. Sit down.
The actual hair on your eyes.
Oh. Let me have. Don't touch the mouse. Don't touch the mouse.
Put it down.
Oh, you want to say something funny before we get started? So, here's the 49ers, Vikings from 1964. Billy Kilmer catches it. He's hit. Hall of Famer Jim Marshall picks it up and goes the wrong way. Now, this is the best part. He's one of the greatest football players in NFL history. Now, look, this is pre-spiking. So he just kind of throws it up. He's overjoyed. And he's like, where's everybody? Look at the first player to congratulate him. All right.
Sports ball. Yeah.
Okay, don't get me wrong. You don't have to like football. It's funny.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I lost yours. Oh, here we go.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, I do that in Photoshop.
Yeah.
You should do the saxophone picture.
What? Okay, here we go.
All right. So the Oklahoma City bombing was a terrible tragedy that has like a really weird history behind it. The Oklahoma City bombing was on April 19th, 1997, and ultimately 168 people were killed, including 19 children, because they're unfortunately on the second floor of the Mura building, there was a daycare for government workers. And then 500 to 800 people were wounded, and it was the deadliest terrorist attack on American soil since until 9/11. So it was a huge deal. It was a terrible, terrible.